Hey, it's Daphne from Blue Quarry. Recently I participated in a 30-day art challenge, and this is what my art table looked like just 20 days into it. I'd originally planned to put everything directly into one of my journals, but that plan was derailed on day one when I realized this wasn't your one-size-fits-all kind of activity. It was important to me to be able to include my notes, sketches, and studies, along with the finished art all in one place, so I designed a journal that worked perfectly for my needs. In this video, I'll share the simple process I used to create this 9x9 journal with tab title strips. For my journal, I started out with 9x12 drawing paper, and by the way, I'll include detailed information on all my supplies in the description box below. I also used some 12x12 scrapbooking paper as the cover for my journal. This is a cardstock weight paper. You can use just about anything to cover your journal. I also have some wax thread. That's what I'm going to use to stitch it all together. And I have some decorative duct tape, and finally some double-sided tape that I use to piece the decorative paper together to make it long enough to fit my cover. Now the tools are very basic. I'm starting off with a needle. Now I'm using a tapestry needle, but any needle that has an eye that's large enough to support your thread will work for this. You'll also need a ruler, a pencil, a pair of scissors, a needle tool or something small to pierce your paper, as well as a couple of little clips to hold it together. And I use just a scrap piece of paper to create a little template for making my holes. Now there are a few optional tools that would be really helpful to have, but not absolutely necessary. One of them is this scoring board and bone folder that I use a lot to help me get nice crisp folds in my paper. Another is a paper trimmer, but of course you could just use your scissors. And I also use a pair of very small needle nose pliers to help me feed the needle through the stack of papers. The last thing that would be helpful to have would be an old phone book or an old catalog, and you'll see exactly why in just a minute. So the first thing you'll want to do is grab one of your sheets of drawing paper and create a fold 3 inches from one of the short edges. So I'm using my scoring board, and if you don't have one, you can of course just fold it. The way I would suggest doing that is by measuring it and then using your straight edge or your ruler to help create a little score line there. So you can see me just measuring 3 inches from the edge, lining up my ruler with those 2 marks that I just put there. And then I'm using the bone folder again to create a score line in there, but you can use a butter knife, a credit card might even work, something hard and sort of pointed, but not sharp enough that you're going to rip the paper. So you'll want to repeat the process and add the fold to all of the sheets that you plan to include in your journal. Now, I only include 6 sheets because my long-term plan for this journal is to take each of my sections and combine them into a much larger journal. But if you just want to do this simple booklet as your final journal, you can certainly add as many sheets as you feel comfortable, as long as you keep in mind that it's going to be harder to close your book the thicker it gets. So if you're doing a much larger group of drawings that you want to contain, you may want to do multiple booklets instead of just one. So once you've got all your sheets folded, it's time to assemble your booklet. I start with the first page on my work surface, and you just want to make sure that the folded tab is on the left-hand side to start. Now that fold is going to become the center of your book or the spine of your book. Each additional page, you're going to alternate directions. So the next one you're going to face with the tab on the right hand side, and then the next one, the tab will be on the left hand side of the paper. You do want to make sure that you're always placing each new page on the very top of the stack and always alternating directions. So you're going to keep going until you have all your pages in there, the centers all lined up, and then you're ready for the next step. If you flip through your booklet, once it's all stacked, you'll notice that the very first page has a 3-inch tab on it, and every other page will have that same 3-inch tab in between the pages. So for my cover, I pull out two 12 by 12 sheets of that scrapbook paper or that cardstock, and then I need to trim those sheets down. So my front cover I'm going to trim down so that it's 10.5 inches wide by 9.5 inches high. And the second sheet I'm going to trim just a little bit smaller. It will also be 9.5 inches high, but that one will only be 10 inches wide. And I do have a screen coming up that will show you those dimensions. The reason one of them is a little longer is because I create a little folded tab on there and I use that to secure the two pieces together. Next, I pick up the wider of the two pieces of paper and I score a line 1/2 inch from the edge, and then I'm using the ruler here to help get that straight all the way down, and then I fold that all the way down so that when I line my two pieces up again with that folded edge, they should be the exact same size with that piece folded. Now I'm taking a little strip of double-sided tape and I'm applying it to that edge. Notice I'm going on the pattern side of that fold. And then I'm going to remove the protective paper and line those two edges up. Once this all comes together, I end up having a cover that's 9.5 inches high by 10 inches wide when it's folded over. The last step for my cover is taking that duct tape and cutting a piece of it that's a little bit longer than the height of it, lining up my fold as close to the center as I can, and then going ahead and securing one side, trimming the top and the bottom, and then adhering the other side to try to get it as smooth as possible and as even as possible. It doesn't have to be perfect. When I'm making a hand stitch binding, I like to use a template to locate my holes. A template is nothing more than a sheet of drawing paper that's 3 inches wide by the height of my book. So in this case, it would be 3 by 9. Then I fold it lengthwise through the center, and I mark the location of my holes on that center fold. In this case, I decided to go with a 4-hole pattern, and you'll see that I mark the top of that template because I'm planning on using that template multiple times, and that's one of the advantages of having a template. You're only measuring once, and then you can use it over and over for multiple booklets. The next step is to take my cover and take my fill paper and stack that on top, and then add my template on top of that. making sure that everything is snug in the corner and lined up nicely, centered between the top and the bottom. And then I use my little clips at the top and the bottom to secure everything in place. Then you'll grab your catalog or your old phone book and you nestle everything into the corner of that as well. And then use that sort of as a cushion to help keep everything together and allow you to use the needle tool to poke all the way through, making sure that you go entirely through that duct tape as well. Once you have all your holes pierced, you can go ahead and put aside your catalog and get out your thread. So when I'm doing this stitch, which is called a pamphlet stitch, normally you just need about 3 lengths of the book height of thread in order to make sure that you have enough to go through the binding and have enough to tie off at the end. Now I'm starting off leaving the template in place because I don't want to disturb those clips just yet. I want to try to get at least a stitch in there, maybe part of the next stitch, before I take that template off and risk everything shifting around on me. Now the first stitch I start in toward the center. Wherever you start that stitch, that's where you're going to end up tying it off. So you want to keep that in mind. I am starting at my second hole down from the top, and I'm leaving a tail of about 3 to 4 inches in the center of the booklet. I'm just holding it in place. Well, usually I hold it in place with my thumb, or you just want to be really careful when you're pulling that needle through that you're not pulling the tail of the thread with it. So now you see I've gone through that center and I've stuck my needle a little bit through that top hole, and now I'm removing the template because I don't want to stitch that in there. I want to be able to use it again. And I'm wiggling that needle to get it all the way through. Now I'm going to just zigzag in and out every single one of those holes until I reach the bottom. And then when I reach the bottom, I'm going to turn around and zigzag back until I reach my starting place. You might have noticed me doing quite a bit of wiggling of that needle to get it through the stack. That's partly because of the duct tape on the end, and it can be a little tricky when you're going from the outside in to try to make it through all the holes in the stack. So you just want to go very slowly and carefully. If you have to go one layer at a time, you want to try not to create extra holes in there. You want to go through the holes that you created. Another issue I had was when I was getting the end part of the needle through, sometimes that would get stuck as well. So I grabbed the needle nose pliers at one point just to help pull that through. So once you've made your way back to your starting place, all you need to do is tie it off. Remove your needle and then do a square knot. I like to do right over left, pull it tight, and then do left over right. And then all you have to do is trim your ends and your book is done. Thank you so much for watching. I have plans to do some follow-up videos, possibly showing how I convert my individual booklets into an integrated art journal, possibly doing a flip through of my completed art journal. So please check back, subscribe to my channel, and check out my website, bluequarry.com.